Hi, we're Group 1 and we're presenting on the WIDA Access. My name is Michael.
I'm Sonia.
I'm Tiffany.
I'm Joanne.
And I'm Diana, and I'll start us off talking about our advanced organizer. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about, we'll give a summary of Access for English Language Learners 2.0. We'll talk about the administration of the Access and how to score, how to interpret the scores, and the usefulness of tests for English learners, as well as evidence-based support. So with our KWL chart, we have what we know. So it is an assessment for English learners. What we want to learn is how is this assessment used, who administers it, what information will be provided. And what we learned was that it provides information on students' current level of English language proficiency, and it is administered in schools. Okay, so now I'm going to be talking about, I'll just give a summary of the WIDA Access 2.0 for English language learners. So basically, it's a high-stakes English proficiency assessment that is administered annually to students that have been identified as English language learners. It is adaptable from grades K through 12. So the WIDA Access basically took over a previous assessment that was called the CELA, or the Comprehensive English Language Learning Assessment. The CELA was administered from 2008 to 2015, and it was in accordance to Title I and Title III of the No Child Left Behind Act. So essentially, it's an annual federal requirement that is used to assess English language proficiency, and it serves as one measure to determine when these students are ready to be to exit these language support systems or groups. The Access 2.0 is aligned with the WIDA English language development standards, which include social instructional language, English language arts, language of mathematics, language of science, and language of social studies. So that the WIDA Access 2.0 assesses the four language domains, so listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Although we don't have direct access to it, it includes vital information such as expectations for students' performance at each level of the language development continuum. It aids in instruction in academic language and is in measuring English language proficiency. And it provides a link between what happens in the classroom and the assessment of academic language proficiency. So overall, per the WIDA Access website, it is a component of WIDA's comprehensive approach to promoting education equity and academic achievement through English language development for English language learners. Now I will hand it off to Joanne, and she's going to talk about the administration of the Access 2.0.
All right, thank you, Diana. So as she said, this assessment, we don't have direct access to it because you must complete a training in order to administer the WIDA. So professionals like teachers or teacher assistants, they usually complete a training in order to administer it. So I won't be able to show you direct examples, but I'm going to walk you through the administration and hopefully we can get a clear picture out of it. So basically, this test can be administered either paper-based or online. Paper-based is offered only for kindergarten, kindergarten and grades 1 through 12, and online is only offered for grades 1 through 12. And so administration is going to vary according to grade level. So kindergarten can only have paper-based, it can only be a paper-based assessment. So this is an adaptive assessment where the proctor is going to determine the proctor presents questions that the student is expected to respond to and understand based on previous levels. So basically, it takes about 45 minutes to administer, and the test items are thematically centered around two sections based on narrative and expository text. The narrative section must be administered before the expository section, and basically in these two sections, within these two sections, there's 3 different parts. So there's going to be 6 parts in total. And within each section, 1 or more language domains are going to be assessed. So the 3 parts in each section are divided into 5 levels, which correspond with the first 5 WIDA English language proficiency levels. So the tasks at that level are designed to assess language at that specific proficiency level. So because this is an adaptive assessment. All parts are going to be administered, but not necessarily all levels are going to be administered. It just depends on the child's progress through the test. So now let's talk about the assessment for grades 1 through 12. So they offer paper-based and online for grades 1 through 12. And for the paper-based, the assessment is administered in 3 different sessions. Those sessions are listening and reading, writing, and speaking. For listening and reading, the listening portion, the proctor will play a pre-recorded message and students will write answers in a test booklet. For the reading portion, it's pretty straightforward. They're just going to read passages and answer multiple choice questions. For the next session, which is writing, it's also pretty straightforward. The students are just going to write the responses in a test booklet. And for the last session, which is the speaking session, the proctor will play pre-recorded message and record the students' responses for later scoring. As far as for the online assessment, this is also an adaptive assessment in the sense that it challenges the students to show their abilities as they progress through the steps, as they progress through the test, because it's going to adapt according to their performance level. An important thing to know is that they must first take the listening and reading tasks first, as it's going to determine their placement in the other domains such as speaking and writing. So those are the different ways that the access for ELLs 2.0 can be administered. So now I'm going to hand it off to Sonia so she can talk about scoring.
Okay, so for scoring, first you get a raw score, and that indicates the number of correct answers, and then that's translated into a scale score. So the scale score allows the scores to be compared to kids of other, allows it to be compared to kids of other grade and different tier, and the possible ranges of scores for kindergarten through grade 12 are 100 through 600. And then there's proficiency level scores. That is an interpretation of the scale score. There's 6 of proficiency level scores, and that is 1 entering, 2 beginning, 3 developing, 4 expanding, 5 bridging, and 6 reaching. And then after that is the composite level scores, and they're derived from a combination of weighted scale scores of the language domains. So first there's oral scores that combine scores of listening and speaking, literacy scores that combines the standard scores of reading and writing, comprehension scores that combine listening and reading, and then the overall score that reflects a weighted score for 15% listening, 15% speaking, 35% reading, and 35% writing. So in the interpretation of scores, to monitor the growth over time, they look at scaled scores. And then for the proficiency level scores, it is most widely used for making decisions about students, and it reflects it's weighted heavily on the literacy score. So now Mike is going to talk to you about the usefulness of the WIDA.
Okay, thank you, Sonia. So what I'd like to do is talk about the usefulness of the Access program for students and their families, for their educators or teachers, and finally for their SLPs. So first, for the students and their families, it helps them understand their progress. So it can give them information on their trajectory of acquiring English, and it'll tell you how close they are to succeeding in classrooms without any additional language support. I found it interesting during our interview with the school-based SLP who had experience with this program. He said that generally the students phase out of the program within 5 to 7 years of learning English, which we know is pretty consistent with the research of Cummins, who found that generally within 7 years, students acquire the Cognitive Academic Language Proficiency, or CALP. So this does measure what it says to measure. So for the educators, Access is useful because it gives them information on where the student is in their proficiency and if they're ready to participate in those content-heavy classes. And if they're not, it offers them some information on how to enhance the classroom activities for those students to meet those students' needs. And finally, the usefulness of the Access program for SLPs. The test is highly correlated with state academic standards that can help guide some certain therapy goals. And also, it can be another piece that assists in the differential diagnosis between a language disorder and delay versus what we consider normal second language acquisition. So now I'm going to pass it on to Tiffany, who will discuss the strengths and weaknesses of the Access program.
Provided our literature review, weaknesses of WIDA are as follows. According to Esquinza, 2005, available language proficiency assessments only assess language based on grammar and not pragmatics, which can invalidate test items. Another weakness of WIDA was previously stated by Sonia, which is the domain weights when calculating language proficiency. As declared by Abdi in 2008, if each domain has a unique contribution to English language proficiency construct, it is difficult to justify aggregating the domain scores. However, there are many strengths and benefits to using WIDA. As declared by Cook and colleagues in 2011, whom set to define English proficiency and the time it takes English learners to reach the status, schools must be held accountable for the academic development of all students, and to acknowledge and reward growth over time and determine academic achievement appropriately. Using WIDA allows states within the WIDA consortium to meet the No Child Left Behind criteria and be held accountable for the academic success of their English learning students. WIDA is a valid and reliable assessment that allows English learner professionals to assess academic language across the 4 domains of reading, writing, speaking, and listening as specified by the WIDA standards. According to Abdi in 2008, WIDA was developed utilizing second language acquisition framework, which serves as our 3rd strength for the program. And lastly, as declared by Kenyon and colleagues, WIDA allows professionals to longitudinally monitor students' progress in English across grades and proficiency levels. Here are our references. Thank you for watching.